a journalism degree and a PR degree are practically the same thing.
No, absolutely not.
That's what I wanted to hear.
I absolutely disagree with that 100%.
The Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast, formerly known as the Neo Marketing Podcast, offers real-world advice, expert analysis, and smart success strategies for entrepreneurs, investors, decision makers, and business leaders.
Hey everyone, welcome to a bonus episode of the Strategic Growth Podcast. We have 5 Wednesdays this month, so we're giving you a bonus episode.
Bam.
Here we go. First off, we got Pritch repping OU. We got the Sooners about to kick off the football season.
All right.
For those of you who love college football, you know what I'm talking about. For those of you who don't, I don't understand you.
Right.
That's fine. Whatever turns you on.
Whatever floats your boat.
And those of you watching the video, you can see my nice haircut.
Yeah, check this out.
Got my end of summer haircut, so I'm feeling all festive and feisty, and it's a bonus Wednesday.
Yeah, perfect.
So I have 2 questions I want to ask you, and this is another thing, folks. Pritch does not know what I'm about to ask him. Nope. I love doing this to Pritch. Yeah. I'm going to give you 2 scenarios. I want your input. I have a pretty good idea what you're going to say. I can't wait to hear it.
Okay.
All right. So
we'll
the first
shot.
One, do you remember back when in 2020, COVID was really shutting down a lot of businesses? There was a lot of stress on businesses, a lot of people not doing their normal business activities, going and spending their money in restaurants and other businesses.
Right.
And some people in the restaurant business was the worst about this, but some other industries were adding a COVID charge. Do you remember that?
Vaguely.
Where you got the bill and you're expecting it to be X amount of dollars, and it was a little bit more, and there was another one, so there's local sales tax, federal sales tax, and then a COVID charge.
Okay.
Bad idea, right?
Bad idea. Hugely bad idea.
We discussed on the podcast the fact that I think it was a bonus part of one of our other episodes, that what a bad idea this was.
Yeah.
Mostly because people didn't expect, they didn't know it coming.
Right.
Now, some places put a sign in the door. We're going to give you a COVID charge on your bill. And it made some people mad. They didn't go, or at least you told them up front before they spent their money, before it's come time to pay the bill.
Right.
So that's not happening anymore. But I've been seeing a lot lately that businesses are now adding this mystery inflation fee. The cost of business is going up. So they're raising their prices, and they're getting blowback from consumers about their prices.
Right.
But now they're adding this mystery fee too, to try to make you think that you didn't pay too much more for that TV set or that hamburger or whatever it is you're purchasing, but they slip something in you maybe miss because most people don't pay attention to the taxes.
Right. To that side.
That seems quite dishonest to me. What's your take?
Well, I agree. I think it's very dishonest. I think basically what you're doing is increasing your prices, but trying to mask it in the fine print.
Yeah, you're not telling them up front.
No, it's not ethical in my humble opinion, because you're not being straightforward with them. And everybody's tracking inflation. We all know that this is increasing our costs. So
not a surprise.
Why are you trying to get away with subterfuge when you ought to be just straight up and honest with people?
That was my reaction when I saw an article about this fee being added by various types of businesses against restaurants. Kind of have the tendency to sneak these in.
Yeah.
And my initial reaction was that this is very wrong, it's very dishonest, it's very unethical, and I have a feeling Pritch thinks the same way too, so I'm going to bring it up on the podcast.
Yeah, well, we are simpatico on this one for sure.
There we go. So we're 1 for 1 on that one.
1 for 1.
All right, here's the second one. This one is much more relevant to Pritch Pritchard, the Professor Pritch Pritchard.
Okay.
We're going to talk about some educational backgrounds, talking about specifically public relations, but we're also going to talk about journalism.
Okay.
Some of the ways these things cross each other.
Wow. Okay.
This could get interesting.
I'm spring-loaded.
Okay. So, as a long-term college professor, would you agree or disagree that the degree tracks and what you learn in college, in higher education, in public relations, which is what you've taught for a long time, and journalism, J school as they call it, are very different?
Yeah, in some aspects, I think they're very different. Enlightened programs, and that is that, in my definition of enlightened, people who understand the function of public relations and the function of journalism focus more on the commonalities than the differences. Then I think that's a good thing. That's where we need to be. But this I think the siloed thing, especially in today's polarized environment, I think that really is dangerous for our, not just society, but our democracy in general.
So would you agree if someone were to say a journalism degree and a PR degree are practically the same thing?
No, absolutely not.
That's what I wanted to hear.
I absolutely disagree with that 100%. There are similarities in terms of providing information to the public. It's a symbiotic relationship, but public relations goes so much further beyond just talking with journalists.
Right.
I mean, it's talking with all of your stakeholders, helping to translate from internal to external, from external to internal. There's so many more functions of public relations that are not covered in journalism.
And there's a tremendous amount of ethical consideration.
Absolutely.
As a PR practitioner.
Absolutely.
And as a journalist.
Yep.
There's similarities, but there are also some major differences there as well,
yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And a lot of the intro to public relations textbooks, ethics is in the back of the chapter almost as an afterthought.
First.
Not the way we teach it
right.
at the University of Oklahoma. Ethics is in the first couple of chapters because it's foundational. It's absolutely non-negotiable and foundational. So
it comes back to that conversation. You got to put your goals and strategy before you put the tactical execution, right?
Absolutely.
Don't get into execution until you understand the ethics behind being a journalist and collecting information for a news broadcast or news publication.
Yeah.
And the same thing when you're acting on behalf of your client as a public relations professional. You have to understand the ethics of presenting yourself in the best light, but not spinning
right.
or obfuscating
right.
or telling half-truths, etc.
Right. Exactly.
So being as honest as possible, but still protecting your brand as well.
Yep.
There's ethical considerations there as well, correct?
Absolutely.
So here's my real point. Here's my main point. And this, I know a couple people who kind of fit this, so I'm not mad at them. If you go and got a job, that's fine. However you got your job. I'm not mad at you. I'm mad at the system. Not really mad. I'm aggravated
frustrated
when I
maybe.
see people who go to J school.
Right.
They get their degree as a journalist.
Right.
They work as a journalist.
Right.
They go to their local news station or newspaper or online outlet, and they do reporting and they do investigations, and maybe they read the news online or on the desk as an anchor.
Right.
Right. And they're very active as journalists.
Right.
And then if they were to leave that job, whether not just to leave that TV station or that radio station or that publication, but to get out of journalism.
Right.
They're very often hired as the public relations professional for a business or an organization.
Yeah, and that used to be much more prevalent a decade ago than it is today. Yeah, there are those folks who are making that transition, but typically their role within the organization is restricted to the journalism side of things, and so not having had the training. They're not as engaged in some of the other fundamental purposes of public relations. It's a single track kind of a thing. It's not a. I'm trying to find my words today and struggling, but they're a one trick pony, in my opinion.
Which then for me feels like, why are you hiring a one-trick pony? Why would you kind of limit your organization and instead miss out on the opportunity to bring in a full-fledged PR professional who can handle multiple aspects of public relations and not just simply someone who probably has relationships with other journalists?
Right.
Because that's such a minor aspect of public relations.
It is. I mean, it still receives an awful lot of attention, and it's first thing that many people think of when they think of public relations. But again, it's such a small part of the overall purpose of it. So I get it. I think for me, it's a total education thing. I think it's if an organization is hiring a journalist and all they're asking the journalist to do is to connect with their old buddies,
right,
and to get favorable media coverage,
is what it looks like from the outside,
then it tells me that the organization really doesn't understand the purpose of public relations.
That's how I feel about it too. And that's the aggravation part that came up with me. And so, and again, I know some people have done it, and I'm not mad at those folks. Hey, go get yourself a job. Congratulations. But as employers, as CEOs, as C-suite, as leadership team members, as people who make decisions on who to hire and why,
right,
It's our job on the podcast here. It's our job to challenge them and push them to be better and better.
Yep.
There's best practices, and then there's how you can be even better. Right. And this is one case where how you just laid out that a journalist converting to public relations has some limitations, and you really probably should consider someone who's a full-time public relations professional. And with, of course, full disclosure, I have a PR degree. Your background is 100% in
20
PR
years
as well.
Of teaching in PR.
But the points that we're making are still valid.
And
no degradation
agree.
to journalists either.
No.
Same thing. They went through that specific education. Right. They have specific skills and specific ethical considerations that they should be utilizing as journalists.
Right. And for a select few industries, just having that expertise on staff is really important. But in the big scheme of things, I think it's very limiting for an organization because you're not able to, and the training, the education in public relations over the past 20 years is advanced by leaps and bounds. I know I was involved in blowing up our curriculum at the University of Oklahoma before I retired from full-time teaching, and there's some real cutting-edge stuff, right? I mean, in a previous podcast, we talked about social analytics in terms of crisis communications. Mm-hmm. Journalists aren't learning that stuff in school.
Right.
So I think that education in public relations has come much further than many people realize. And for me, that's another proof point of why you want somebody with that well-rounded PR education.
But there's still plenty of programs that are sort of back in the day.
Yeah.
I could tell you my alma mater.
Yeah.
That I recently got a chance to see their curriculum, and it's very similar to what it was when I was in school a very, very, very long time ago, with a little bit of social media added to it. Not an overhaul, not blowing up like you did at OU, but literally just how we've always done it for 20, 30 years. Now we'll just add a little bit of social media, a little bit of online presence, and call it good, which I was pretty disappointed in. I thought that could have been futurized a whole lot better. So I'm glad to hear that OU blew up that old program and made improvements.
Well, it's not an easy thing to do. It takes an awful lot of work. It takes support of the administration, the people that are paying the bills, right? Because if they're not supportive of your efforts, then it's not going to go anywhere. Academe is a horrendous bureaucracy sometimes, and it's like trying to turn an aircraft carrier.
Right.
You can't turn it on a dime, and so. It is such a sometimes difficult, painstaking, time-consuming, painful evolution to change curriculum that most folks just say, okay, we're good.
Because you'll never get that battleship turned around if you don't start turning it.
That's exactly right.
You got to start somewhere.
You got to start someplace. So yeah, I understand why programs tend to be wedded to what's happened before, because it's very difficult to make those changes. It's certainly not going to make instantaneous changes. I mean, we're talking probably years in order to fully impact a curriculum.
I think in this age of fake news and misinformation and even a lot of things that are presented on traditional mediums like television and radio that are opinion and commentator, but not necessarily journalist, and it's easy for the public to confuse that. It's easy for the public to confuse public relations efforts in journalism and investigative journalism, et cetera. And then sometimes just straight up marketing, talking head telling you how great the business is, or your political candidate or anything of that nature, right? So any chance to avoid something that maybe looks like news, but it isn't news, like hard journalism or hard news, or isn't third party, but is the brand itself representing themselves in a certain way. Any attempt to avoid the confusion, I think, is beneficial. Any attempt to embrace that confusion, I find to be unethical and I think is unprofessional, and I dislike that as well. So I think if you do end up bringing former journalist in to work in your public relations or communications team, you have to be very specific in how you utilize them. We talked about their limited skill sets, but don't try to embrace the idea of potential confusion that benefits you. You need to be very, you got to build that wall.
Absolutely.
You build that hard wall between the advertising and the promotional side of things with public information, with being honest with your audience.
Timely and accurate information. Absolutely.
Absolutely. So don't lean into that confusion. Avoid it, separate it, make sure it doesn't happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
There you go. That's all you have to do.
100%.
If you'll do that, then you'll be seen as ethical, as professional, as elevating yourself, and the communication that does come out of your public relations, the advertising that you do, all of the brand presence that you do, social media, etc., will be easily accepted because you're seen as having high standards and avoiding confusion.
Absolutely.
So it's a win-win.
100%.
Yeah, there you go.
Bam.
So I knew I would get 2 interesting conversations out of Pritch today. I love springing these surprises on him where he does not know what I'm going to ask him.
Making me work my brain hard this morning.
I occasionally keep trying to find topics that we can disagree on. It doesn't happen very often.
It doesn't happen.
Which is a good thing. And, so I'm going to keep digging through my notes. And I'm trying to find a topic where sometime I'm going to spout it out and you're just going to go, no, dude, I don't see it that way at all. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find that.
Okay.
Well, that's our bonus episode, our 5th Wednesday bonus episode for August. Here we are about to end Q3. We're about to coming into Q4. Like you said, football season's coming, which means the change fall and it's summer into fall. The weather's not so hot. This is a good time for people to sort of get fired up for the end of the year and get reinvigorized from a long, hot summer and, and start making things happen. You also should be well into your 2023 planning and forecasting, right? So take all the things that we always talk about here on the podcast and put that forward to how you're going to move your company forward into the future. This is the time of year to do it. There you go. So there you have it, folks. The special episode, 5th Wednesday of the month, episode of the Strategic Growth Podcast. I surprised Pritch with 2 questions he didn't know was coming. He gave great answers. I appreciate your input.
Thank you, man. I
appreciate it every time. So make sure that you are subscribing, that you leave a comment, leave a review. We'd appreciate it very much, but we absolutely appreciate when you listen to each and every episode of the Strategic Growth Podcast. Until next time, good luck.
Ciao.
Thanks for listening to the Golding Group Strategic Growth Podcast. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Tell a friend, leave a review, and engage with us on social media. To contact us, please visit thegoldinggroup.com.